Welcome to lesson number 7, Reporting Violations and Working with Enforcement. This information can also be found in your manual in section 6, starting on page 26. This lesson will take about 10 minutes. As an inspector, you will encounter violations at one point or another throughout the season. It is very important that you handle these interactions carefully and professionally. Remember that the primary goal of an inspector is to educate watercraft users. Use these interactions as key teachable moments to teach the watercraft users how to avoid making the mistake in the future. So when you do encounter a violation, you need to complete a thorough inspection. If the watercraft is entering, deny launch if all violations cannot be corrected at the access. An example is that you cannot remove the zebra mussels that are attached to a watercraft and there isn't a decontamination unit available to decontaminate the boat before they launch. Be sure to record any and all violations in the survey, like drain plug, plant, and other violations. Zebra mussel violations will require additional documentation. This is very important that you do not immediately remove any mussels, as you will need to take photos when prompted in the survey. The watercraft user may also understand that they have zebra mussels attached and may try to remove them. Inform the watercraft user there is a violation, but that you have to take pictures to document the violation. Be sure to upload the survey within 24 hours and provide a write-up to your supervisor for all zebra mussel violations. Your supervisor will let you know what law enforcement agency to contact if there is a violation that needs to be reported to them. When finding a zebra mussel violation, you will need to take photographs when directed in the survey. We need clear photographs where you can identify the zebra mussel or mussels. It needs to be attached to the watercraft or water-related equipment. Do not take pictures of the mussel in your hand or on any other surface. This is why it is important for you to not remove the mussels before taking the photographs. It is very important to take good images, as this is how the conservation officers will be able to follow up on any violation. If the picture is not clear, you can always retake the picture before moving on in the survey. When encountering a zebra mussel violation, you will need to upload your survey and send it to your supervisor, a write-up within 24 hours. Here's an example of a zebra mussel report form to fill out when you find a zebra mussel violation. Either fill out a paper form and turn it into your supervisor, or use the email template and email the information to your supervisor that day. This information is important to the officers as it gives them an additional information about the situation and the interaction between you and the boater. When working at a landing, it may be very busy for you and you may not be able to type out an email right that minute to your supervisor. So having a notebook or a piece of paper handy where you can jot down some notes with all the information there is helpful for when you need to send them that write-up. You will need to have certain information on that write-up, like your name and phone number, date and time and location of where that violation occurred, the towing vehicle make and model and color, if the violation was by a lake service provider, or if you contacted law enforcement. Some of the other information you may want to include in the rest of your write-up are a description of the watercraft user and how they reacted to the violation that you showed them, if there were any other violations present at the time, like a drain plug, water, or plants, if there were any additional zebra mussels that were attached besides the ones in the picture, and approximately how many zebra mussels were attached to the watercraft. Not all violations need to be reported to law enforcement. Sometimes when we see a violation, we can use that as a teachable moment instead of contacting enforcement. For example, a drain plug violation. We are not going to call law enforcement. Instead, we're going to use that as a teachable moment and teach the watercraft users the laws and the risks of having their drain plug in. Here's an example of situations where you would want to call enforcement. Egregious violations. Example of that is something like watercraft user arrives at the landing with prohibited species, they refuse an inspection, they launch after you verbally deny launch, or they refuse a legally required decontamination. Anytime you contact enforcement, you also need to contact your supervisor. This is required. Provide them with details of what has happened. You may also need to upload your survey and your zebra mussel report form if needed within 24 hours. Remember that safety is important and that you are an expert witness. You may be asked by law enforcement for additional detail not listed in the survey or in your report form. It is a good idea to have that notebook with you and write down any details of any unusual situation you encounter at the access. It is possible you may get called into court as an expert witness for a violation. It will be helpful for you to have the detail of that situation written down to relay them to enforcement. Please talk with your supervisor to find out what the procedure is in your area for contacting law enforcement. It varies between each county. Many of you may be contacting your local enforcement, such as a county sheriff's office. Your supervisor will need to give you the direct phone number you should be calling. If you do need to contact a DNR conservation officer, you will need to call the general number and explain that you are a watercraft inspector. Let them know what location you are at and what you are trying to reach, and that you are trying to reach a local conservation officer. They will either dispatch one to that area or have an officer get in touch with you directly. So what happens when you have a watercraft that is leaving a body of water that is known to not be infested with a certain aquatic invasive species that you have found? Explain to the boater that the lake isn't known to be infested with this species. Just remember, it is possible that you may be discovering a new infestation. With that being said, you need to remember that you need to treat the boater with professionalism and courtesy, as they may not be violating any laws. When completing the survey, be sure to take a photograph when prompted in the survey. Collect as much information as possible from the boater, like how long the boat was in the water for and out of the water previously, and where the boat has been in the past. It is important to contact your supervisor and let them know what you have found, and you may, if you cannot identify it. Always be sure to have a sample for any identification purposes. Even if you can identify the aquatic invasive species, it is still important for you to take a sample and turn that into your supervisor. You will also need to upload your survey and send a write-up to your supervisor. When reporting a new infestation, it is important to fill out the Suspected Aquatic Invasive Species Collection Form that it can be found in your manual in the Appendix C. Fill this form to the best of your ability, as it will provide additional information to the DNR invasive species specialist who will be following up on this report. You can also use this form if someone approaches you at the landing and believes that they have found a new aquatic invasive species. If possible, always attach this form to the sample of the aquatic invasive species. This lesson is now complete, and you are ready for the next steps in the watercraft inspection training. The next step of this is to watch 2 videos. One of them is on inspection with violations, and the other is dealing with difficult boater. Once you are completed with those 2, you are ready to move on to lesson number 8, working with the public.